I think we are also live.
Oh, we are? Hi,
Yes.
everybody. I see. Okay. Well,
Madhav, we'll-
Yes, I'm able to see.
Okay, that's great. We are also live.
Also live.
So,
okay.
so
Excellent. So let's get going then.
great.
Uh, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining on this festival day, Makar Sankranti, or, whatever else that you are celebrating today. And thanks for taking out the time and joining us for this important discussion. So ATL Marathon is here again, and all of you are participating. This is very exciting. Um, uh, I am sure in this audience there's students and teachers and mentors and so on, and we want to introduce to you this new element that this year's ATL Marathon requires you to carry out and also submit some material on, which is on what was the research that you did in order to work on this solution, the problem as well as the solution that you have submitted. Um, so we in the past we haven't asked for research analysis when people submit their final entries, and then what happens often is that you see that there are many me too ideas that come about, right? Somebody else has done some research somewhere, but this person has done the exact same thing or does not know about it, or and so now I think it's, well, at one level, if one is just trying to learn, there is nothing wrong with me too. Or if one is just trying to create a business, there is nothing wrong with me too, because there may be market for it. But when we are trying to do innovation, obviously we want to work on new ideas, and when you want to work on new ideas, you have to know what new means. That means what somebody else has done before, and how what you're trying to do is new. And then when you identify that new thing, then obviously you really want to research that new thing, and you need to know how to research that new topic, because obviously because it's new, it hasn't been done before, so you need some kind of a method to go about researching it. And as many of you know, in the world of scholarship, there are many methods for researching new topics, new chasing new hypotheses, new ideas, and so on. And I think today we want to discuss with you what are those methods that you can learn, that you can look at, and then you can pick from for your research, for research of your idea, so that you can find out how new it is, how to, and then as well as how to research it, whatever hypothesis that you may have in your mind. We're very fortunate to have a very familiar face that all of you know in the ATL community, Professor PVM Rao from IIT Delhi. And today, together, we're going to explore how to do research, and then therefore the result of what you learn from this and what you use is what you will also be submitting as a part of your final submission for the ATL Marathon. So over to you, Professor Rao.
Hi. So, I think good afternoon and welcome to today's session. So, I think as Dr. Chintan Vaishnav mentioned, that whenever we have any problem solving, is there a method how to choose a problem, and is there a method how to choose a solution? or is it purely based on one's own experience, imagination, or let's say knowledge, or is there a more systematic way of identifying a problem and doing a research? So that's what probably we'll do today. So I'm audible, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. We can go to the next slide. Yeah. So if you look at this particular slide, it actually tells you whenever we try to sit for finding a solution in the form of, let's say, a product or a service or anything, if we do without research and if we do with research, what happens? So if you look at the first point, often you are not sure, am I solving the right problem? And when you go through a research process, and then it also kind of give you a confidence that having done enough research on the problem itself, not on the solution, that yes, I think I have researched enough to know that this is really a genuine problem which I'm trying to solve, not purely through my own imagination. Because many times students pick up a problems where there is not much research, then later after solution, when they go to people, they realize that this was not actually the real problem. So I think research gives that option. And also it gives you who are the people for whom I am actually trying to build a solution. Because suppose if I am actually, let's say, working on a particular community with whom I have never interacted, it would be good to know about that community a little bit before I actually start working on a solution. So the research gives you that option. And it also tells you, I think, as Chintan also mentioned, if I have picked up a problem, is this something, am I going to solve this problem first time in the world, or have people already attempted? If people have attempted, there must be some solutions. Then the question comes ki why these existing solutions are not working. Then what innovation should I do to make it work? Becomes a more important aspect. And it also will help you, it gives you a confidence when you sit for a solution later, having known the community and the people very well through research. You also get a confidence that the solution which you are working is likely to be accepted, and it overall gives you the overall context of the problem. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. Okay, next. Yeah. So one of the things which you see, problems which are given to you, there are various categories. I just picked up one such area as an example to demonstrate. For example, one of the things which is given to you in the education theme, innovate to help children with special needs learn effectively. So this is one of the area or a problem area which is given to you. Now, there can be many things which can be done in this particular aspect. And suddenly I can come up with a bright idea and start working on that. But ideally, I would like to understand this particular problem a little bit more in detail. First, at a very broad level, then I'll go into more specific aspects to know. Next. Yeah. So you can populate the entire slide. Yeah. Okay. So for example, I want to know how big is this problem. In order to know that, so what are the different category of disabilities in India? Because you're actually looking at maybe as a special needs, people with disabilities who also need to be educated, who also aspire to educate. Then what are the different? When you do research, you come to know that, oh, India classifies into entire special needs into 21 different disabilities. Many of you may not be even knowing, but the research tells you that these are the different type of. Now, how many students with special needs are there in India? What is this number? Is it 20 lakhs, or is it 5 crores, or is it 7 crores? That's an important to know for how many people actually are being addressed. And is everyone able to go to schools? Suppose if there are X number, you can say that only 10% are presently going to school. Or is it 30% who are going to school? Or is it 80%? uh, Getting that ratio is very important. If suppose if I get an answer that only 10% people are going to school, 90% are not, then I'll probably do research on why people are not going to school. Or is there, what are the specific pain points? And I would like to identify. And what are the reasons, as I said, you want to find out? And also, what type of schools the students with special needs go? For example, if somebody is visually blind, do they go to a normal school and sit with other students and study? Or do they go to special blind schools? Or both the versions exist? For example, in India, we have both. We also have students going to special schools, which is meant for that disability. But there are also many schools which accommodate students with disabilities, which is called as a universal education. And I think it's important to know. And are the schools disabled friendly? Maybe when you go and find out, you'll find that most of you will find that your own school probably is not disabled friendly in many respects. So that also gives you new ideas how to make it disabled friendly. Next. So that is like a broad area. Now, from that broad area, then when you do a research, you come to know that probably the most difficult thing, or let's say the most important thing which one need to address in order to bring people with disabilities to, let's say, normal schools and universal education is that how to make classrooms and laboratories accessible for them. Maybe many people would tell you when you do a research, they're not going to schools because classrooms are not accessible. Laboratories are not accessible to people with disabilities. Then your research tells that this is the most important problem which you want to address, and then you start doing a little bit research on more specific aspect. For example, are our classrooms are equipped to accommodate students with disabilities? For example, can a student on a wheelchair can enter the classroom, or probably there is no way wheelchair can come inside the classroom? That becomes a first important thing. Are other students in class sensitive to special needs? Because sometimes it also happens that students need to be sensitive to accommodate another student with a disability, which is an important aspect. And even if they come to the classroom and if they sit with other students, are they able to participate like any other student? Or there is some form of a disadvantage for them that they are not able to. So I'll find out a little bit more about this research. And also, teachers who teach people with disabilities need some kind of a training. So, are teachers really prepared for teaching students with disabilities? So, because many of these answers you may not be knowing. And suddenly, if I come up with a new innovation for a classroom without knowing any of these things, it's possibility that it may work, or in most cases it may not work. But if I do this research first and understand the problem very well, and then sit for a solution or a new idea, that idea is very likely to work. Now, from this particular one, accessible classrooms, maybe you would like to go even more specific. Go to the next slide. Yeah. For example, you want to address the previous one. So you want to address the problem of just a minute. Yeah, you want to address the problem of how to make students little bit more participatory and independent. Okay, so if you look at this particular slide, it says more specific issue related to special needs. How to make classrooms more participatory and people can be independent. So the questions and the research questions which come is, how will student who is, let's say, a deaf will listen to teacher and other students in a classroom? uh, then you can think of, okay, this seems to be a very specific problem for which large number of innovations would be needed, or very specific device or a solution would be needed. And I want to work on this specific problem rather than a very broad problem. Or how will, let's say, a student who is visually blind can see what teacher is writing on the blackboard? Is there a possibility to have a solution to address this particular problem? Or how would somebody who is student who is in wheelchair would actually access to chemistry lab where the experiments are done at a certain height? Now that becomes more specific problem to address. So there can be a multiple. So if you really look at the research questions which you started from previous slides, you started with a very broad research and you also went into more specific aspects as you did the research. Next. Yeah. Yeah. So how to do this research? There are two different approaches and both are needed. First is called as primary research. Primary research tells that I would like to spend enough time in a classroom where there are students with disabilities also are there in the class and understand their problem directly observing them, uh, or I immerse in the classroom, sit there and spend maybe few hours or few minutes or few days to know what are the kind of problem a student with special needs is actually facing. Second is called as the shadowing. Shadowing means you make a friendship with, let's say, some student with disability and be with this particular person when the student enters until the student exits the school, and look at what are all the things the student, or what are all the pain points which student with special needs would do. Role play means experiencing the problem yourself. For example, for one day, I want to solve a problem of visual disability. I chose to, let's say, blindfold myself for one day in a classroom and see, am I still able to learn? Or if I'm not able to learn, then I get a kind of a direct experience of what happens. Then you would like to interview, talk to students, teachers, and find out, because this student may be attending classes for many years. What are the problems? What is the most biggest pain point? And you would like to gather this information by talking to them and interviewing them. So primary research is an information which you gather yourself, and it's like your own efforts, your own interviews, your own observations will fetch you a lot of data related to the problem. Secondary research means if people have already have a literature and enough data and research literature on this problem. Let's say it could be internet may have a lot of information about how to make classrooms accessible, let's say for a student with hearing impairment. Then I'll read those articles, I'll read those research papers, I'll read those reports, and I can also go and look at, are there any patents filed on technologies which have been invented to make classrooms accessible? And if there, I can also go to marketplaces like Amazon or any of them and look at, are there any products and solutions already available for this particular thing which can be bought? If it is there, then even I may buy and try out and see whether this is working or not. Okay, the next slide. Now, what happens when you actually do a good research is that your problem also becomes more refined and very specific. specific. For example, you initially the area which is given to you is innovate to help children with special needs learn effectively. This is what is written in the actual document under the education. Now, when I do a research, I would like to see that my research says the most important thing is how to make classrooms more effective. So I'll change my problem statement as innovate to help children with special needs participate in classroom effectively. There may be many things which where the help is needed, or there are many problems which are faced. Out of those problems, I'll specifically select, let's say, classroom problem, because my research says this is the most important and critical aspect. And then when I do further research, it says one of the major issues which probably is there is problems which is most critical is people who can't hear, hard of hearing or deaf face serious challenges. There have been a lot of instances where students have actually left the school because they are not able to hear teacher, they are not able to hear students. So I would like to probably take this as more important problem and do innovate to help children hard of hearing and deafness to participate in classroom. Once you say third statement, which is here, you are not looking at other areas like people with visual disabilities, people with physical disabilities. You say maybe someone else will work, but I'll work only on people with hearing impairment because my research found that this is most important. And I can even go back and one more level and say among many things which makes class participation effectively, one specific problem which I want to address through my innovation is how to innovate to help children hard of hearing deafness to get access to classroom just conversation, just be able to uh, get what teacher is speaking and what students are speaking. I can actually have a product or a solution or a service just to address this specific problem. Then that becomes my more specific problem idea on which I would like to work. I'll just close by just giving a small incident. So we had a student, his name was Madhav Lavkare. So Madhav one day found that one of his classmates actually left school a few years back. When he found out why did this student leave the school, since he was student with hearing impairment, he mentioned that he is not able to follow what is happening in the classroom and not able to hear. So then Madhav thought he'll do something. So as a 10th class student, after his 10th class exams, he started actually working on some device where speech can be converted into text. That is what. Then he looked at there are already existing solutions, but they are not working. Then he kept on working during his 11th class, 12th class, and even after 12th class, he's now a student who has completed 12th, and he has just joined his engineering degree in a university. But he kept on working from his 10th class summer to date, and in next few months, he's actually releasing his product into market. What is this product? It's basically the glasses, and when this glass also has a speech to text conversion facility, and whatever, if I am actually in the classroom, whatever teacher and students are speaking, it comes as a display on my glasses which I'm wearing, so that uh, I can actually read your conversation in the real time. And this actually took many a few years for Madhav to develop this particular product. But finally, this product is actually now hitting the market, and it will help thousands of people basically to overcome this classroom participation problem. And interestingly, Madhav was also given the government of India recognized his efforts and gave him Rashtriya Bal Puraskar, which is like highest civilian award for children below 18, which is given by Honorable President of India and the Prime Minister. So there are many interesting stories where accessibility related issues can be addressed. And India needs such innovations, uh, many in number, because right now we are not able to provide accessible education to all. This is just an example, but you take any of the areas which is given to you, you will find similar examples, and you should be able to do similar research and probably come up with more interesting way of solving or identifying your problem. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor Rao. And well, as you all know, everyone who's participating in ATL Marathon this year. This year's theme is the G20 presidency of India and the topics that are recognized as important topics under that. So that will be your playground roughly. But no matter what you choose, as you could see from this example, no matter what you choose, there would be need for research. Um, and in fact, this time, the research becomes even more important because for G20, 20 nations are coming together to think about innovations. So you may find that solutions that you were thinking about are implemented somewhere in one of these nations and so on. So your search has to expand to global solutions that are available to the problem that you are going to pick. So I know that there are some questions flowing in on YouTube, and so we'll take those questions. But maybe I can get us started with a couple of thoughts that I want to ask a question of Professor Rao. Some general things. So these days, one finds that there are too many sources of information, like at least for the secondary research. Uh, how does one how does one select from them? I mean, how does one prioritize that something is more believable than something else, and so on?
Yeah. So I think still internet is the probably the best source for most of the information, and and we get a lot of information when you do your keyword search, etc. But I think at a first level, internet is a very good idea. But as we probably become, our problem becomes more specific, then I can look at existing products, then patents, etc. Can be searched. And one of the interesting thing which we did is very recently we did some research through Chat GPT, and actually it gave a very valuable information which we could not even think of. So even those tools are now available for people to say. Even if you take any of the problems which are given as a part of ATL Marathon and put it in Chat GPT, you get a lot of information.
Yeah, yeah. And now when you do that, then there's always going to be this question of gold standard like peer reviewed research versus uh, other forms. How do people prioritize between them?
Yeah, so it's both, because every student may not have access to every information also, because some may have been written as a research paper in a journal. Some of them may be accessible, but some of them may not be. For example, if I want to do search and patents, there are many interesting patent searches. Once I have little bit more specific problem, I can actually go and do a patent search, and it will say there are 10 patents filed on this idea. Then you can also look at if you want to come up with something novel, it's also good to know that if you are actually considering one of these 10 ideas, uh, you may or may not have probably an option to do the same because it's still patent is active. So those ideas do come. And also primary research is a very important, and I think secondary research gives you some level, but talking to end users, potential users, and the people who are stakeholders is extremely important. And I think uh, at least some time should be spent on primary research apart from secondary research wherever there is a possibility.
Great. I think there's a on YouTube. There's a question that is along the lines of what we're discussing. Uh, 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 I mean, uh, a part of that question says, "What kind of research would adhere to academic standards or would stand academic scrutiny?" Um,
So see, this research is not like a research which is typically done at a PhD level, that requires much more time, much more rigor, and this thing. But here, even for example, these days, uh, even if you use the internet as a source, you may end up with some of the academic type of research which is done. It will lead you to those places, and you can still have a look at it, which is there. And library, I know not many students these days use libraries effectively, but they are still very valuable source. I would still spend some time in library and look at any books, reports, any journals which are available. If I can, if there is a possibility for me to look at, I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, great. I mean, there's along this idea of how much time to spend on research. There's a question also on YouTube that, what is the suggested time to spend on such research? Given that I think the context here is that there's a 6-month long marathon,
Yeah.
and within that, you're spending some time on research. Yeah.
I, I I would say I don't know. You have to also align with the timelines of the marathon, which is there. But I think it would be good to spend at least a few weeks just researching on if there is a possibility. And these days, in fact, information is easily available. I would also look at some of the specific websites of the G20 nations, and also look at, for example, let's say if I want to know what is happening in Argentina, okay, may not be there may be a specific marketplace where most of the people from Argentina go to buy. I would even look at that. Maybe why not? Matlab, if there is a time, what are
Yeah.
the products available in Argentina for, or what are the solutions already available? Now that becomes, but most of the problems which are also given are of global importance. So that means if you are able to come up with wonderful solution, there is a market not only in India, but there are many people waiting to buy in other countries as well. Particularly, I mentioned about special education. Some of these classroom accessibility solutions are needed in every G20 country.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think one is in sort of a golden era when it comes to doing research because so much of the information is accessible.
And
On
Chintan, you also mentioned about time, which is an important. It's true that there is no end to research which can be done, but it's better to keep, let's say, a time. You can say that I would like to spend 1 week on general understanding the information related to the problem. As I go into more specific idea or a problem, I'll do one more level of research, but this research is specific to that particular specific problem and not a very generic research. So research also becomes more and more specific as your journey starts with an area to a specific problem.
Yeah. So now there's one question here that asks, are there some research tools that you would that students could make use of? I mean, in some ways, we have spoken about aspects that are all say chat gpt is, for example, a tool, but are there some of your favorite tools that you recommend to the students?
So one is that, like, I'll just give an example, maybe for a primary research, because secondary research is largely through libraries and internet. Like, we were asked to basically look at the problems faced by patients in public hospitals. So what the people who were solving this did is they actually went to hospitals, sat there, looked at the patients who are coming, who are leaving, what is the kind of problems they faced. Like, when they sat there, they came to know that there is no sitting place, there is a long waiting queues, there is no information which is readily available for them to know where to go, how to go. These are all came up because somebody visited hospital and sat there for some time, which is an important. And then we also asked the people doing research to get them treated in the same hospital. Okay.
Oh, I
So,
see.
okay, so this was a ophthalmology department, which is related to your eyesight and eye related problem. We asked all the team to get your eyesight tested in the same hospital so that you go through the same pain points which users would do, and that gave them a very valuable first-hand experience of the problem to do that, which is there. And then also talk to some of the patients who recently visited hospitals as to in your entire journey from entering to the exit to hospital, what are the, let's say, few things which need improvement, kind of a thing. So each of them gives you very valuable data. And I think after the research, what team would get is something like very lot of insights. Each insight is an important, and then you can look at some insights are coming from multiple sources. So there is a very high probability that this is a potential problem.
Yeah, so now, there's one question here by Vilas Gharat from Maharashtra. He's asking, how do you, can you say more about primary research and so on? So let me suggest to you, Vilas, and all of you, that just these two terms, primary research and secondary research, just Google how to do primary research or how to do secondary research, and you'll see gobs and gobs of good information on it. We're all getting started, and then there's of course the question of not every method is appropriate for every problem, right? So you'll have to, given what you're working on, you'll have to decide which one makes sense, and you will get guidance on that also. But I think I recommend diving deep into these things.
So one of the tools they can actually search for primary research is empathy mapping. So empathy mapping is a there is a lot of literature. So what empathy mapping tells is when you go to basically study a problem yourself, uh, you are not only just looking at the problem and the problem environment, but particularly from the user point of view, you are looking at what user is doing, what user is thinking, what user is saying. All of them become a very important. Many times the problem exists, but people will explicitly will not say. So, but you observe that the problem is happening. So what you see, what you feel, everything is important when you do primary research.
Great. So I think because the time is short today, I want to move on to one more question that has come up, which is that what are some common mistakes that students do when doing research? in their early years?
Um, I think there are no specific only thing it's not a mistake. Suppose if the problem in order to understand the problem there are 10 aspects which need to be studied. People may spend all the time in two or three aspects and they will not be left with enough time to look at other aspects. That can happen. That means how you do time allocation and time management also becomes a very important. And how do you, if there are four people or a four-member team or a three-member team, how do you allocate your time judiciously is also very important. Instead of all four people doing everything, you can also divide and do better time management.
Yeah, right. And I think so. One other thought that was crossing my mind, which is something that I have struggled with, is that at one level the purpose of this doing this research is that you you avoid jumping to conclusion somewhere, and avoid your own bias. Are there some best practices that you would recommend in avoiding one's own bias?
Yeah. So I think best way is that when you're doing about research, don't think about solutions. Only think about the problem. The moment you start thinking about a solution, you get biased towards that solution. So I think the clarity is key. There is a research phase when you are actually trying to study the problem. I'm not even thinking of the any solution. But then there is a second phase. Once my problem has been well defined, I'll only concentrate on solution and not think about the problem, other problems, etc. So dividing this time explicitly for to basically to finalize the problem and to finalize the solution would greatly help. But there are also, it's sometimes important in this is that also to know, for example, there may be other stakeholders than the users. Like we had a one example where students did a very interesting project to help the patients, but this was not acceptable to doctors. So doctors rejected this solution. So it's important to also consult doctors if you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. No, and give us one final question, and I think then we'll be out of time. But give us a glimpse into when PhD scholars do research. Uh, uh, what is the role of this long-term view and history of a problem, and how do they go about it? How much time they spend, and is it, does that process end in their PhD, or does it go on during their PhD, or just so students, some of our students will also sort of dive really deep into research. So what would you have to tell
Yeah. So
advice?
PhD research is sometimes slightly different from the kind of research which we are discussing today. So this is more to solve this particular problem. See, PhD research is that you take more specific topic and go as deeper as possible. So, in other words, your problem becomes really small, but the depth to which you actually go becomes more, and that's important because PhDs requires you to create a new knowledge. Okay. And so creation of a new knowledge requires more rigorous efforts. Here we are doing basically uh, research for new application, new knowledge application. So sometimes we may not be as rigorous as PhD, but once you do this research, most of you will find that research is a very interesting career, and some of you may probably would enjoy doing a research and end up maybe in your future years and careers maybe a PhD. So the depth to which you go sometimes is very high in PhD research, and sometimes PhD related problems only come up with curiosity driven knowledge, but they may not solve any problem. But here, I think in this marathon, all of you are expected to solve some problem.
Great. I think that's a great note to end on. My own PhD advisor. It reminds me of Dr. David Clark, who once told me that, well, at the end of your PhD, you may know a very small thing, but you are the only person to know it first. So but yes, you're absolutely right. Here we are looking for novel applications of known knowledge, and to try solving problems that are of interest at this time to the 20 nations across the world. So let's bring this to a close. Thank you very much for the session, Professor Rao, and to all the students, teachers, mentors. This is the first year we have formally a chance to do and submit research as a part of the ATL Tinkering ATL Marathon. So if anything else we should do, Suman, or shall we just bring this to a close?
No, sir. Thanks a lot, Dr. Rao, Dr. Chintan, on sharing your ideas with all the students, the teachers, and mentors. We hope that this will help them build better projects, try to research, and then go on to build projects rather than going on YouTube, searching which project to build and then building it. So, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot for and wishing a very happy Makar Sankranti to everyone, and hope to see great projects on the in the participation of ATL Marathon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.